So now that we have a good idea of the difference between pages and posts, I want to talk to you about creating content for our WordPress site. So this is pages, posts, and then handling our media like our images, and then talk a little bit about comments that are left on our blog posts, which we also have to moderate. So the first thing I want to talk about is posts. So this is specifically the standard post that comes with WordPress. So this is, when we're talking about posts right now, we're talking about it in the context of blog posts for our blog, or blog articles for our blog page, right? And so in order to get to posts, you can see I just did it there. If I go back to my dashboard, I can hover over posts and it's going to show me a couple links here. The first is to show all posts that are in the system. The second link is to add a new blog post, and then we can add in categories and tags, and I'll cover that in a moment. So for now, we're just going to click on all posts, and we're going to see a post listed here called Hello World. And what this is, it's the default kind of sample blog post that is installed with WordPress, just to kind of give us an idea of how they should look and how they're set up, right? So we have our blog title here. We have the name of the author, the user who created it. We have the category that it's currently assigned. This one isn't assigned to any because we don't have categories yet, so it's just called uncategorized. Tags, if we have tags in the system, and then the number of comments. And this comes with a sample comment, so again, we can kind of see how they're set up. So if we hover over the title, you'll see some links that show up here. The first one is edit, which is going to bring us to our edit screen. The second is quick edit, and this is going to bring up some meta information that we can quickly edit, right? So that is, we can change the title of the post. We can change the slug, and what the slug is that is the words that are going to represent this page or post in the URL, right? So if you look up here, we can see this is my page URL, and then right after that is WP-admin, and that WP-admin is the slug for the WordPress dashboard, and then you can see that I'm in the edit part. And so when we're using clean URLs, right, this is for SEO purposes, we're going to use slugs instead of something like, you know, post ID != 46, right? Because that's what it would be without the slugs. It would just be like the page IDs or the post IDs or something like that. And so since we don't want that, since it's not good for SEO and we want our URLs to be clean and organized, we use what's called slugs, and that's what this is. So if I created a page called blog and the slug for that page was blog, the URL would be, you know, mywebsite.com/blog/Hello World, right? And that would be the Hello World slug. We can also change the date. We can add a password to the post, so it requires a password to view. We can change the category that that post is in. We can add tags to it. We can choose whether or not to allow comments and pings. I'll talk about that later. And we can change the status so that we can make it published, which is live and available on the website. Pending review, which means an administrator or an editor should review it. This is useful if you have people submitting blog posts to your website. They can automatically go into a kind of a review queue. And then we have draft, and that's kind of like a work in progress. As you're working on a blog post before it's finished, you would save it as a draft. And if you remember on that home screen, we had that kind of quick edit or quick add widget. And if you added that, this is the status that would be applied with, which is a draft. And then we can make it sticky, and if you're familiar with forums or something like that, you'll know what that is. It's where that post will show up above other ones, regardless of how they're organized. So even if they're organized by date, a sticky blog will show up above all the others. So that's the quick edit screen, and then we have a view, which just brings up the blog post. So you can see here is my sample blog post on the front end, and our sample comment, and then our sidebar. So you're probably used to seeing something like this. And then we have trash. Now, just like on a Windows computer or a Mac, if you delete a blog post, you'll see a new folder shows up here, trash. And so when you delete content, it is not necessarily deleted forever. You can go into your trash, and that's where we can delete it permanently, or we can restore it, right? So I'm gonna leave this in our trash because this is just a sample post. I wanna walk you through creating a new post, and then we'll go into pages, and then I'll talk about, again, media and comments. So first we're gonna click on Add New to add a new blog post. And the first thing we're gonna do is give our blog post a title. And then here is our content section. right? And so this editor here, this is going to seem pretty familiar to you if you've used anything like Microsoft Words or really any kind of content editor. It's fairly standard with what's available. So if I just type in some content here, if I highlight this text, so this is a WYSIWYG editor, which stands for what you see is what you get. So however I format my content back here, it's how it's going to look on the front end. If we click on this other tab here, text, it's going to show us kind of pre-formatted text, and I'll show you that again in a second, but this is for actually displaying the HTML code or the format options within our text, right? So let's go back to visual, and if I highlight this, I can change this from the paragraph, which is just standard paragraph text, and I can make it say a heading or a heading 2, so a slightly smaller heading, all the way down to pre-formatted, which means don't do anything with this text. And so we'll make it paragraph for now. If I highlight a word, I can bold it, I can make it in italics. I can also create a bulleted or a numbered list by clicking. This is for bulleted, this is for numbered, and you can get it, as you can see, it shows, if you hover over it, it tells you exactly what it does. So I would just enter in some information, hit enter, and I can add in a second and third and fourth and fifth. So this is pretty standard. You can align text, add in quotes, stuff like that. You can play around with this editor. One thing I do want to mention is that, and this applies for both pages and posts, we're going to be using what's called a front-end page builder, and you can also use that not just for your pages, but also for your blog posts. So we're going to be able to create kind of a unique design based around our content for every post that we build. So you're not necessarily going to be using this interface, but the interface that we are using works fairly the same. It has the same options and stuff like that. So what I would recommend to you is that I'm just showing you this now to kind of show you how WordPress handles content, and so you can get familiar with this editor, because we're going to be using that quite a bit, or a similar one anyway. But I would say don't go crazy entering in all your posts and pages right now. Hold off until we get to the front end theme section of your tutorials, and I'll cover that in detail. So if you want to get started, you can go in and create the posts and put in titles and publish them, just so you have an idea of all the posts. You can even put in some demo content, but just keep in mind that when we go through the front end theme section, I'm going to show you how to do posts and pages and kind of design around your content and a lot of cool stuff. So if you want to create the structure now by adding posts and pages and just entering in a title, that's fine. And I actually recommend that because it gives us a good way to kind of visualize how our site is structured. But don't go crazy formatting and managing your content, because we're going to do that later on when we get in the front end page builders. But this editor is pretty standard when it comes to adding content, so it's a good idea to kind of get used to what these different buttons mean and stuff like that. So like I said, we can create a list here, and then if we want to add in images, there's an add media button, so we can click on add media. And if we've already uploaded images, you can go to your media library and they'll be listed here. If not, we can upload an image, and we can do that either by clicking select files and it'll open up that interface, or we can just drag and drop a picture, which I will do right now. So if we drag a picture onto this, you can see it uploads it. It gives us we can put in a title, a caption, alternate text, and a description. And I do recommend that you do that for your images, because it is great for SEO, for marketing. So every image that we upload should have a purpose. We shouldn't just be uploading images to have images in our content. They should all be relevant to our content and add some, value to our content, right? And so if we're uploading images, we want to add in a title for that image, a caption, alternate text, and a description. And we can choose, the alignment of it, and we can either have it linked to itself, so a larger image of itself or the original image, or we can have it linked to a URL. And we can also change the size. So it's going to auto format it either as a thumbnail, medium size, or the full size, which is just however big the image is. And then we click insert into post, and you can see my image shows up. So like I said, we're going to be, I don't want to get you too confused with this, but generally it's good to know how posts and pages are created, but when we go through the front end theme, I'm going to show you how to create posts and pages using front end builders, and at that point you want to go in and mess with your content. For now, and I'll show you this during the initial site setup, it can be helpful to go in and just kind of create your pages and posts so you have an idea of the content that's going to be on your site, but don't waste too much time right now messing around with this editor and putting in content. We'll deal with all of that later. But so that's our content editor. So we want to put in a title, we want to put in some base content for now, and we'll put in more later on. We learned how to upload images into our content. And then on the right hand side, this is kind of the classification of our blog. So the first is format, and because we're going to be using, again, front end page builders, we can largely ignore this. But if you are using a more standard theme, which has predefined layouts depending on your content, then they may have these different options. So if it's an image post, it'll be formatted to accentuate the image. If it's a video post, the same kind of thing. If it's a standard blog post, it's just the normal text, that you might see with a featured image at the top. So these are more for standard themes that don't have front-end builders. So we can pretty much ignore this, but if you do later on install kind of a normal WordPress theme, and you have different types of blog posts, so we have image posts or video posts or links or something like that, this is what that's used for. But we thankfully can just kind of ignore that. The next part is categories, and this is something that we're going to be using to classify our blog posts. Now, one of the big mistakes I think that a lot of people make when they get into creating a WordPress website is they make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of categories, and they put their blog posts in 10 or 15 or 20 of them because they think that that's kind of helpful for marketing or something along those lines. Unfortunately, that's not really true. For both SEO purposes and just for your own sanity, we really want to have short but descriptive categories, and each blog post should really only go into one of them, or if you have categories with subcategories, they should go into one subcategory. We don't want a blog post going into a lot of different categories. We want to set up our categories so they can cover all of our blog posts. So just kind of keep that in mind, that we want to have short, succinct, specific but descriptive categories, and we want to set up our categories so that one blog, so they're overarching, so that if we have a blog post, it's generally going to fit into one category, and that's both good for structure and also good for SEO, right? So let's say that I was going to create a food blog. I would, for categories, I would create something along the lines of, say, breakfast. I would create a lunch category and a dinner category. And then you can also create subcategories. So if I was going to do dinner, I might do, let's say meat-based dishes. And I would say that's a subcategory of dinner. Now that's a terrible example, but that's why I don't run a food blog. So you can see that, we have very kind of succinct categories. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you may want to have subcategories if you find it necessary, depending on your content. But just kind of keep in mind that we want, one blog post should go into one category. Don't try to fit it into a bunch of different categories, because it's bad for SEO. It's also just kind of confusing for users when they're going through. They might want to browse your different categories, and it's the same posts that keep showing up over and over and over again. We're actually hiding some of our content from our users. So you can create categories through here. There's also a categories interface, which I'll show you in just a second. So to add a new category, we have to click this link, and then we just type in the name of the category. If it's a subcategory, we select its parent from here, and then click on Add New Category. Now, tags is something a little bit different. So tags would be something similar to like Twitter hashtags, right? So they are kind of keywords that can connect cross-category blog posts. So while a blog post is going to go into a specific category, tags may be applied to blog posts that are in several categories, and it kind of ties them together. So I think that you can kind of see the difference between categories. Categories are more like a folder, and then the tags kind of can be used to kind of cross-classify blog posts together. So if I was running, let's say a food blog, but also a restaurant review, I could do something like, steak, right? And so steak is going to bring up, regardless of whether I'm having steak for lunch, breakfast, or dinner, it's going to bring up everything to do with steak or something, or also if I'm doing reviews, it would bring up any reviews where I had steak or steak restaurants or something like that. So just trying to kind of try to keep it organized when it comes to categories and tags. Tags are the things you kind of go wild. You can apply 10 tags to a blog post, but with categories, we want to fit them as many as we can into just one category, or at most two if you find it really necessary. And then at the bottom we have featured image, and that's going to apply a featured image to your blog post, and that's essentially the main image for that post. And a lot of themes will set up a specific location and display for that featured image. So it's the main it's the main image of the blog post. And then depending on where that is laid out in the blog post, it depends on the theme, but for us, again, we're using page builders, so we can do whatever we want with it. I'll show you that later. And then up at the top, we can save this as a draft. We can preview it on the front end by clicking on preview. We can change the visibility. We can schedule the blog post to be published in the future, so to be a draft, and then on a specific date it would be published. And you can also change this date later on. So if you wanted to kind of reorganize your blog post based on date, you can go in and edit these dates manually. But generally, when we're done, we can click on publish, and it's going to publish that on our front end. So I can take a look, and you can see this is on the theme that I'm using, which is the default theme. This is kind of the area for the featured image, so that's where it shows that. And then here is my actual blog post, and you can see it has its categories and it has my tag. So that's generally it. That's how we create a post. It really is pretty simple. If you don't really need to get crazy with your text formatting, it's even easier. You can just kind of throw in your title, and if your blog posts are just essentially just paragraphs of text, we can drop those in there. Choose a category, put in any tags, put in a featured image if you need one, and click publish, and that's it. You have a post. So I'll cover that again when we get into front end stuff, but that's just generally kind of a quick overview. And so now I want to talk quickly about categories. So you can do those, as I said, in the post interface, as you saw me do, but you can also add them here. So we could add in, let's say, a brunch category. We can put in a slug, or it will be generated for us automatically. This is our drop down, and we can put in a description of the category, and then we just click create new category. So if you have a bunch that you need to add, you may want to do it through this interface, and we can also edit these or delete them from this screen, right? And then the same thing with tags. We can add a bunch of them at once by filling out this form under tags, and we can edit them, delete them, etc. So that is everything for posts. Go ahead and check out the next video, which is going to cover creating and managing pages.